So today in class we went over 4-6, which was still solving polynomial equations, but really it was applying our fundamental rule of algebra. And the fundamental rule basically just says that whatever the highest degree that you have in your polynomial is going to be equivalent to your answer. So if my highest degree for this one is 5, then I know that I have a total of 5 solutions. And so in this section I said the easiest thing to do is to go ahead and just graph it and figure out what it's going to be. So when you do this, if your line crosses a number, then that's going to be an answer. So like for example, the green line crosses here at the 2, and so this would be one of our answers. But as we can see over at -1, something a little bit different is happening. And basically what's happening here is, well, it's touching the -1, but it's not actually crossing it. And so because if you want to think about it in terms of this portion is increasing at 1 and this portion is decreasing at 1, as opposed to over here where it's only increasing, instead of having just -1, we also have 2 -1s because two things are happening. It's going up at -1 and it's also going down at -1. And so we call this multiplicity. And so usually I annotate this by saying 2, -1 with multiplicity of 2. It means the same thing. It doesn't matter how you write it. After this point I said, if you have all your answers, then you're good to go. You don't have to do anything else. But if you are not having all your answers, then now you have to apply what we did in 4-5, which was doing the synthetic division and solving from there. So for this one, we need a total of 5 solutions. And if I count this up, I got 1, 2, 3, I'm missing 2. And because I'm missing 2, I have to go ahead and do the synthetic division and figure out, what piece am I missing. So I'm going to start with the 2 since it's easiest. I got 1 and x to the 4th is missing. So I'm going to go ahead and use a placeholder of 0. Placeholder is always 0. And then I have x to the 3rd, which is just 1, and then -2, -12, and -8. All right, so I have everything, and now I'm going to go ahead and I know 2 is going to work, so I'm just going to factor it out. That will give me 2, 2 and 4, this will give me 5, that will give me 10, 2 times 8 is 16, which gives me 4, 2 times 4 is 8. So those are canceled out. I know -1 is going to work, and I know I have multiplicity with -1, so I'm going to have to do it more than once because I have more than one -1. The fundamental theorem of algebra says that if you have multiplicity, it's considered separate answers. So that means you have to do it separately. So here's the first time. This will give me -1, which is 1. This will give me -1, which is 4. This will give me -4, which is +4. This will give me -4, which causes it to cancel out. And then finally, my second time doing -1 for its multiplicity, that's going to give me -1, which gives me 0. -1 times 0 is 0, so that gives me 4. And then -4 crosses out. So, I can go ahead and list my solutions. My solutions are going to be x equals 2, -1, -1. And I'm writing them separately, so it's really obvious, what I'm seeing. For this portion, though, to get my final 2 answers, since I don't see it on the graph, I know they have to be imaginary. And so I'm going to write the factor of this. This will be x squared plus 4. And I know it's going to be x squared because remember, as you're dividing in synthetic division, this started off as x to the 5th power. If you divided it, now it's x to the 4th. Divide it again, now it's x to the 3rd. So by the time we get here, it's x to the 2nd. And really, this is x, and this is our constant. But because x just has like a 0 in front of it, we don't have to write it. So we have this, and to find our solutions, you must set it equal to 0. Please make sure you set it equal to 0. And we solve. Subtract 4. This gives me x squared equals -4. Take the square root of both sides. X equals positive or negative, because it's positive or negative because we took a square root of a variable. 2, because that's the square root of 4, I. because that is what we have to use when we have a negative underneath the radical. So if I go back to the top and list my answers, it would be 2i and negative 2i. And this would be my answer. And if I want to count it just to double check, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 answers, which matches, that was my cat, which matches my fundamental theorem rule. So that's that. I will say in the next video I'll have a scenario where instead of it being a beautiful binomial, we'll have a trinomial, and I'll show you what to do there.